The industry have changed drastically due to COVID-19. There were lockdowns, there were restriction of movement, which forced people to start looking for alternate ways of going about their daily lives. And then, everybody had to go back to online options. So I would say one of the very impactful things that COVID-19 have brought on board was the rapid adoption of e-commerce, of online shopping, of social commerce, and this has been very evident even in our operations.
As a result of COVID-19, what we have seen is that tech adoption has been fast-forwarded on the enterprise level. So I'll give an example. During COVID or pre-COVID, something as simple as electronic proof of delivery was a tough ask, right? But then during COVID, people couldn't move around, cargo had to move, and there needed to be confirmation of delivery. And then you saw this shift where customers were then changing to accept electronic proof of delivery. And so that's one sort of data point, but that has been one factor that has really helped to drive growth because, just digitization and adoption of technology really we believe really will underpin the growth in the economy.
Logistics industry has changed a lot. First, we've seen quite a lot of digital players come into the space, unlike before. So we have the likes of Kobo 360, Trella, MVX, and a few other companies that are in this space and are making logistics a lot easier and simple for businesses to move goods in and around the continent. So that has really evolved the space over the last 5 years. And in light of COVID, we've seen a lot of tech adoption compared to before, where businesses were not open to utilizing tech solutions to move things like freight and shipments. But due to COVID, we've seen a lot of tech adoption. At least for MVX, we've seen that grow over the last a couple of months since the COVID lockdown.
Quite a few things to consider. The future of e-commerce in South Africa, where space that I work in, is very promising. While the effect of COVID and lockdowns have been devastating, the online logistics and food delivery industry has grown exponentially. And again, it's testament to the resilience and flexibility of a very exciting industry. And I suspect that the growth is going to continue long after we have COVID under control.
There are quite a number of things, actually. First, we're seeing growth in SME lending, which wasn't there before. So we have a lot of startups that are coming up, helping businesses and people get loans. And with that, you're seeing, businesses being able to, participate in trade, unlike before. And so that's one bit. Secondly, we're urbanization and population growth. So we're seeing people move from rural areas to communities and cities. And with that, with more people in those places, there's more demand for goods, both whether import or export, as the case may be. And also trade. We've seen that most African communities and cities are looking at exports trade a lot more now than before, especially non-oil and gas trade. So with that in mind, there's this increase and growth in logistics than before.
On some of my predictions of how logistics in Africa will evolve in the next few years, I think there's an enormous opportunity for growth and expansion into new delivery categories, including adjacencies beyond food delivery on the continent. The accelerated shift into digital commerce is going to continue to increase, with more transactions taking place online and merchants optimizing business to meet demand for this instant delivery industry that we're looking at. So by having an online presence, companies can scale real time by actively tracking consumer activities and caching on cookies. And as people continue to migrate to the online sphere of daily operations, having this ability and policy to keep up with consumer demands is going to be vital for success, both now and post-pandemic.
Every industry is experiencing some sort of revolutionary change when it comes to digitization and technology. And so logistics, although it's super offline and manual today, COVID has started to sort of infuse that growth. And our sort of prediction is that over the next few years, we'll continue to see that accelerate. If you essentially continue to walk when everyone else is running, you will be left behind. And so clearly the logistics space is realizing this and, trying to see what sort of efficiencies they can drive with digitization. We've been able to, from everything that we understand, there is less than 1% is fully digitized in the space, and is creating significant inefficiencies. And so to drive that efficiencies, people and players in the space are starting to realize that, look, we really need to embrace this.
Yeah, so logistics and commerce in Africa will be transformed by technology, and by technology, I'm also talking about digitization. So a lot is going to be done with online, smarter ways of doing things that we're doing presently. It's already started, so we only see that it can get deeper and deeper and deeper. Internet penetration is all-time high. There's no part of Africa now that mobile phones are not used. So a lot of technology are going to converge. Your mobile phone will be your all-time, powerful tool. You could shop, you could pay, you could do everything, and you could also do your logistics.
So, logistics is ripe for all of these new emerging technologies that we haven't started to see in the space today. Think about IoT. It's perfect for tracking cargo. Think about blockchain with all of the documentation that passes from hand to hand. It's perfect for that. Think about AI, all of the data that is collected in this space. And so our vision is to start using all of these emerging technologies to drive visibility and drive data-driven decisions for all of the players in the ecosystem. That's our strategy that we believe will drive commerce further and make our goods more competitive. Our ultimate vision is to drive down the cost of goods on the continent by driving efficiencies in the logistics space. And so that's where we're going over the next few years.
As a company, we are a strategic initiative because by 2050, a quarter of the people on Earth will be African. And so we are building technologies to accelerate the future where Africa relies on trade and less on aid. With more tech adoption and also with solutions like ours, we're looking to help businesses trade better. Secondly, we recently joined what they call a WCA. It's like an elite group of freight forwarders. And so we have access to nearly 10,000 freight partners in 193 countries. And this gives us the network to move goods to any of these countries and also move goods from those countries to Africa with ease, at a cheaper rate and much faster for businesses.
When I look at our business at Uber Eats, there's quite a few things that we require in order to be successful. First, we require good roads infrastructure, without saying, right? Because the better that infrastructure, the faster I can deliver, the better I can give a better experience, and the bigger my business grows. And in Africa, it's a very unequal story at the moment. You have South Africa on the one hand, which has the 8th longest tarred road network on the continent. And then you have the opposite side, such as Sudan, which have probably near to zero road infrastructure. Reliable energy supply for us. So people can depend on consistent supply of electricity. Means people are willing to invest more restaurants are willing to open. And for us, that's a boon. Telecoms, again, we have some of the lowest internet penetrations in the world. Latest data that I see puts us somewhere around 35 to 40% internet penetration. And again, if we look at things like that and we're considering to growth, very important for us. And then the last one, which is quite incidental, is manufacturing and export capability. When you consider that there are secondary and adjacent economies for us that we need to consider, motorbikes, how do we bring motorbikes for our couriers? Do we build them in country? Does the country offer good export facilities, which makes it easier for us? So these are things that are top of mind when I think about driving our business.
The GIG is here to stay. We're a technology company. We've embraced the digital age, and we have seen that it's the right place to actually be, because the future is digital really for Africa and for us. And our customer obsession philosophy is something that the visionary, Mr. Chidi Ajari, and the management team and everybody in GIG thinks. So before we launch any product, before we do anything, we think about how the customer feels about it first. And that's why we are set apart from competition. We actually don't see them. Exciting the customer is all we do. Exciting the customer is what makes us to churn out the products, our expansion, everything we do. The centerpiece of our philosophy is customer obsession.
So I'd say the biggest issue is inertia and just people getting, being used to the way that they do things. And that's a challenge that as an industry we have faced. And the way that we are solving that is over the last few years, we've really spent time intimately understanding the space. And so working very closely with all of the players in the logistics space. And what that has helped us do is to develop products that work for this market. And so that's how we're solving it. And so, okay, maybe you don't have a 4G phone or a 2G phone even. We can develop products that allow you to still be part of that digitization. And so that's how we're thinking about it, is really building for the market that we find ourselves in.
On the infrastructure challenges today, so if some of these were addressed today, how would it unlock Africa's potential? In quite a few ways. I think when we consider and we look at our industry that we play in, the total addressable market in Africa is sitting at anywhere between $20 and $25 billion. And across the continent alone, right, we've only tapped in 1-2% of that opportunity. So these are still very, very young industries and growing. If we have the potential to tap into just even 10% of that, $2 to $3 billion that gets unlocked in a matter of time. And these are the things that better infrastructure, better planning can make easier for a business like Uber Eats.
So the issues facing logistics broad, but we can also take them in bits. As a company in GIG Logistics, we've tried to address the issues of convenience, issues of coverage, issues surrounding speed, issues surrounding professionalism, and I'll take them one after the other. So for coverage, we are expanding in an alarming rate. Our focus and our vision is to be the gateway in and out of Africa. If anybody is thinking of anything coming into Africa and getting out of Africa, you think GIG. For convenience, I mean, we are out there when it comes to giving consumers convenience with app. You could, have our service 24 hours. We recently launched 24 hours drop off and pick up, in Nigeria. That's, I think I can say, it's maybe one of the first or the few in Africa. So convenience to us is what the customer in the digital age would always want, right? So we are there with offering technology solutions to solve everyday problem through GIG.
Okay, first is around physical infrastructure. So our ports and road network need to be fixed, and we believe that with the governments relying less on oil and gas, they would look more into supporting exports trade by building better, improved port infrastructure, as well as better road network. We believe that process improvement will go a long way in the interim, because if the port authorities rely more on processes and leveraging technology in those processes, we would see a better management of the congestion and situations at the port right now. And so we believe that if we work hand in hand with the regulators, a lot of these things can improve moving forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here again. At this session, we're looking at the future of logistics. I want to thank everyone for watching and everyone who's been tagging along with us. Again, if you have any questions for any of the panelists, we have Slido for those of us who are in-house. Drop your questions. If you're on Zoom, drop your questions in the Q&A section, and our guys will let us know when the questions come up. Also, you're free to upvote questions from other people. If you think that those questions are very important or interesting, you can upvote them, especially for those on Slido, so that we could pick them up and then we could address those issues. Yeah. So on this panel, again, we have Ocholi Etu. He's the Director of Operations at GIG Logistics. These guys are doing something phenomenal. This is a traditional company, and then they go digital app. People are booking their tickets online, and it's working. I think it's really interesting, and they're going on national expansion. Ocholi, please come up stage. Let's welcome him. Let's give him a round of applause for those of us in-house. Thank you, sir. Just have a seat. We also have Tonye. I hope I pronounced this very, very correctly. Membere-Otaji, I believe so. He's the founder and CEO of MVX, a startup that's changing the freight forwarding and trade finance space with the help of technology. Please, Tonye, come up stage. You're welcome. Also, Nakampe Molewa, the general manager of Uber Eats Sub-Saharan Africa. In this role, Nakampe focuses on building the Uber Eats business across South Africa and Kenya, working across the different Uber Eats teams, including product and engineering and restaurant partners. Welcome, welcome. Nice to have you upstage. All right, so don't forget, if you've got questions, drop them. This is a quick one for Nakampe. I was going through Jumia's reports earlier this year, and I saw something like $7 million in revenue from food deliveries, and I was like, seriously, $7 million? Like, is this market this large? So I'd like to hear your thoughts. How large is this market? Should we be getting more competitors? Should I launch a startup and try to get some of the pie?
Yeah, great question. The studies that when I look at Africa is pretty much a blank canvas. As Uber Eats, we are operating in just 2 markets at the moment, which is South Africa and Kenya. And our consumer base is north of 30 million potentially if we just look at those 2 countries. But of the studies that we have done, and I look at the total addressable market in Africa, it's at anywhere between 25 and 30 billion dollars that's sitting on the table and waiting to be tapped, right? If I have to just focus that market a little bit and look at the serviceable addressable market, so that's the one that we can actually roll in pretty much any one of the 13 cities that constitute our largest consumer base on the continent. And there we're looking at anywhere between 18 and 20 billion dollars. So this market is very large and could have the potential to get even larger.
Thank you so much, Nakampe. I'm told that we have one more speaker, Leonard Ebute. Sorry for that. Leonard, please come up stage if you're here. Let's give him a round of applause. Nice to have you. Nice to have you. So I'll let you settle in before I fire some shots at you questions. So, I mean, the logistics space has had a lot of problems, especially for deliveries. And I think it was with e-commerce that people began to really look into that space when Jumia Conga started, and then they had to launch up their own teams to deliver for them. And then so this thing was big, and had to outsource that, and that space just began to grow. So I'd like to throw this at you first. What are those challenges? I think we've come a long way from 2012, but what are those challenges that we are dealing with right now, and what are the solutions to them?
That's a good question. The biggest challenge we have right now is actually infrastructure, port infrastructure, and road networks. I think once those problems can be solved, we'll see a lot more traction as regards trade in Nigeria and across Africa. And also on the tech side, we believe that if consumers have better ways to book freights, whether import freight or export freight, this would improve our process because we aggregate this demand, and then we can also ship all of them at once, which would give us lower rates from shipping lines and different operators in the space. So currently, I think the biggest problem is just around infrastructural problems, and once those problems are solved, then there's a lot of activity there.
For you, sir, I'm a bit curious about GIG. What has the experience been since the company has gone digital? Do users really know about the app? Do they make use of it? How reliable is it?
Oh, yes. I mean, the app was launched, I think, November 2019. It's as if we saw COVID. And during COVID, I mean, that app was the lifesaver for so many people. People, all of a sudden, their lives were suspended, and they needed the daily necessities. And we also saw that COVID did something wonderful. Social commerce was, I mean, it was there. Nobody really paid serious attention to. Then COVID came, and then companies like they had the app. We had what we call the e-commerce plans. Even before COVID, we saw, I mean, tremendous growth that period, and that growth has been sustained. So what COVID has done was to deepen the adoption of e-commerce, and the challenge that e-commerce has had, I mean, you mentioned when Jumia and the rest came, had always been the logistics challenge. Now, over the last 10 years, we had issues with payment. I mean, from the beginning of this conference, I've heard so many people in the payment space. There have been a lot of tremendous improvement in payment solutions, but logistics is still a major challenge. And I think this is what has made GIG to take it up and say, how can we make e-commerce what it ought to be? I mean, we've had good success stories around the world, but why can't it happen here? And the only thing we could think about was go digital. Try to provide convenience for both the merchants and then the consumers. So the moment you're able to bring technology to at least bring that trust, because trust was lacking. I mean, why should I exchange value for what I'm seeing? And then there's no institution like GIG then that you could trust. So the fact that you could see, and then we could provide visibility, your shipment is moving, you can see the shipment journey, you can see, I mean, where stage by stage until it gets to you, and then there's that feedback that deepens the trust, and somehow it has powered social commerce. And we're proud to say that we are even trying to see how we can also launch new product very soon, a product, I mean, still under works, that is going to actually help to power social commerce.
Between 2019 and 2020 COVID, what was like the uptake? I mean, just a quick one. What was like the uptake in users patronizing the app? How did COVID like drive that up? I mean, in terms of maybe percentage, 10% climb, 20%?
Oh, we're looking at something upwards of 70%.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was huge. It was, I mean, it was a leapfrog, really. And that was why we knew that we needed to deepen our hold of the e-commerce space, especially what we call the decentralized e-commerce. Decentralized because you have the major marketplaces who tell vendors to come and register. But we've seen that people have this feel and touch. If they can have small mom and pops that are actually advertising on social media, on Instagram and what have you. But the challenge they had was that how are they sure that that good is going to get to them? And then came the GIG solution. And we've deepened that by even going further, having some subscription plans where we have merchants that we can do KYC. So the customer can trust GIG that will deliver. We'll do COD. So, powering social commerce is one of the things that has changed the landscape for a lot of people in e-commerce space.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
This goes to you, Leonard. He mentioned something, he touched on it, and it's kind of one of the questions that we had prepared about the advances that have been made in logistics in comparison to payments. Payments have seen like considerable progress. So, I'd like to get your thoughts in terms of this industry and comparing it with others. So whether it's in fashion or what's it called, trade or payments, what do you think the progress level has been? Could it have been faster? Is it really slow? What do you think?
Interesting. So we are in a very interesting industry. We're moving only heavy logistics. Typically, we move goods of not below 10 tons upwards per truck. And so when you're moving cargo of that volume, that size, there's a lot of barrier, a lot of touch points between the actual owner of the cargo and the delivery of that cargo. So you might be, and we're aggregators. So essentially you have your transporters, the transporter may be working through an agent, the agent will be maybe working through another agent in different locations, pan-Nigeria, regulatory bottlenecks, regional issues and all that. So there's a lot of blue-collar component to the industry right now. And so to get the industry digitized, you need to first of all demonstrate competence that you're able to deliver first. And then you then look for nodes that you can then digitize. Like you talked about payment. Most multinational companies in Nigeria still will not want to have electronic proof of deliveries.
Still will not want to have?
Will not want to have electronic proof of deliveries. Why? Because they still run an audit process that want that paper trail. And so taking businesses on that journey to see that this is better, this is faster, this is even more auditable, more visible, it requires performance. You need to answer their questions before they ask them. And so at the stage that we are in that sweet spot. We believe that the people we are working with are still early adopters of our technology. But again, these early adopters, we are still struggling to service 5% of their demand. So we're in a very good place. And we've been growing on a very swift trajectory, month on month. That tells you that even at the early adoption stage, our market is such a huge market with huge potentials, and therefore we're very optimistic.
So what I hear is that space hasn't witnessed as much progress as other spaces. Okay, cool. One thing I'm not hearing, but I've heard a lot from people, is whether it's regulators or just the way things, So, I hear that it's quicker to get goods from, say, China to Africa as opposed to from South Africa to Nigeria or something, because of the bottlenecks along the way, So I'll push this question at you. Okay, let me say this. Is there any good policy out there, in the last 2 years or last 4 years that has helped, advance free logistics generally?
Well, that's a very good but tricky question. There are quite a number of policies, okay? A few of them, the policymakers have good intentions, but you now have challenges when the boots on the ground are supposed to execute. That's when you have bottlenecks. And we need to contend with those people and try to ensure that they execute the policies, the good policies that whether it's NEMASA or the various bodies have put out there. And our work really is to collaborate with them as much as possible and also find other solutions to move goods. For instance, getting goods into Nigeria, imports, that's one leg. Then you clear the goods. It's easier to clear goods out of the ports and deliver them than to get goods out of Nigeria, which is a huge problem, and it shouldn't be so. It should be a lot easier to export than even to import into Nigeria. But we found ways to mitigate some of these challenges. Like we use barges, for instance, to move goods from shore to the port, and from that point onto the vessel. So we're constantly innovating and thinking of ways to help customers succeed despite the operational gaps we have with regards policies or
All right. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions, ask the trial a couple of questions before I move to Nakampe, because I think what they're doing is also very interesting because of the products that they are. So they're not just moving, they're moving a certain kind of product, you know. So I'm curious as to, so this is to Nakampe. I'm curious as to what the response has been, across the continent to what you do.
It's been varied. So, and it depends at which key stakeholder is responding. So we got a couple, right? So in what we call that golden triangle, we've got the eater who is central to that, right? So giving them that experience, giving them that convenience, making sure that they have access to all of their favorite local restaurants and adjacent products. So groceries, can I deliver small packages? It's just making sure that if they need something moved from one place to another place that can be carried by a courier, we're there. The second group of people that key holders for us are the couriers, where we provide massive economic opportunities, right? So as you can imagine, the ubiquitous presence of borders and people using private cars and transportation to deliver is massive, right? If we just consider the multiplier effect of that, we know that we play a very key role, right, in that part of the economic development of a country. Restaurant partners, right? People who have never had access to certain markets, right, all of a sudden do have access to those markets and providing those opportunities. But outside of that triangle, there are other key stakeholders that are there. So policymakers are very interested in our business, right? How are we rolling out? What is the economic impact on countries, on cities that we have? They look at things like green policy, right? As we grow the business, are we thinking about sustainability, not just financial sustainability, but are we thinking green, right? Are we taking the health and considerations of each city into consideration? So all of those eyes are on top of us. And those are the key questions that these various different parties that I am alluding to will ask and will take an active interest in.
One more quick question. What are those economic indicators that you think can drive this sector? I mean, to just get more people ordering food or groceries, what are those things? Do you see, for example, $1 billion market in Africa? What are the things that could drive that, make that possible?
So a couple of things. So the big one that we look at is real disposable income in Africa and how fast it's growing. If you remember 4 years ago, the world was talking of Africa as a miracle, Africa rising, so the great McKinsey reports and so on, right? Because we were the fastest growing region in the world at one time, right? So real disposable income, very, very important. I look at urbanization rates. We have the highest urbanization rates in the world, right? Those things factor wholly into my calculations when I look at and I think about the size of the market. As I started, $1 billion is small, right? Total addressable market is at minimum 25 billion in Africa at the moment. That's sitting on the table. The third thing I look at, pertinent to what we're talking about, right, it's infrastructure. If we are going to roll out ubiquitously in these cities, infrastructure is very important too. We need good road networks, right? I spoke about in my video that if you look at our business and we look at adjacent economies that we're supporting, let me give you an example. We are one of the biggest drivers of the motorbike industry in the markets that we play, right? So one of the things that we've been asking local governments and local stakeholders is to think about what is our manufacturing capability of these? Where we can't manufacture them, can we bring them in easily? I will, the number of times that we go out and we're looking for bikes, especially in Kenya, right? Where we're told, no, they're stuck at the port, they're coming in and so on. So these are practical considerations for us, that if infrastructure is there, like the tribe has spoken, ports, roads are running efficiently, right? This can only boost the type of businesses that we're in.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've got a question for Guy-Bertrand, who's from Max. But before that, I would just like to share once more that if you've got questions, just drop them in the Q&A. Please also, if you've got questions already, let's just project them so we can take them as we round up. Max has been around for a couple of years. I think they've had to iterate as well. So my question is, what has the company learned? What have you learned with your time operating in Africa? What are the lessons that you learned that probably other logistics players or startups can pick up on?
Hi, thanks a lot. That's a very important, question, right? One of our key learnings is that ultimately, or at least our approach at Max, is centered around understanding and serving the operators, right? The drivers themselves. And that is predicated on the fact that at the end of the day, the quality of our transportation and logistics sector is primarily driven by the quality of the operators, right? Those individuals that actually operate the vehicles that we need to have access to logistics and transport solutions. Whether they are two-wheel operators, whether they are three-wheel operators, whether they are four-wheel operators, whether it's cars, whether it's buses, whether it is small trucks or larger trucks, right? So that's always sort of been the approach that we have adopted, the end goal, through which we have tackled the problem. And why is that, right? Because we've operated on a fundamental basis, which is if we understand their pain points, right, we're then able to empower them, right, to upskill them, to make them more productive, right? And it's those productivity gains that therefore generate more value across the ecosystem, and ultimately more value for us, the users, right? Whether the users are individuals or whether the users are SMEs or whether the users are large businesses, right? So to your question, what we have learned is that as long as we continue focusing on that, right, we will continue finding opportunities to generate value for those drivers and ultimately for the ecosystem, right? And the value can come in the form of, access to better vehicles, right? Access to more adequate, forms of, credit and financial solutions, right? More adapted services to, to empower those drivers, as I mentioned earlier, to make them productive, to elevate their uptime, the time at which they are available to deliver services. And that has a catalytic effect, right? That drives policy making. That drives, security and safety, right? That drives quality of service. That drives economics, right? It drives down, pricing and so on and so forth. So that's, that's also what has enabled us to, since inception, more than 6 years ago, to navigate the changing macro environment, right? To navigate the changing regulatory environments, right? To navigate operating across many different jurisdictions, because each jurisdiction will come with its, let's call them idiosyncrasies. Because our focus has always remained on wherever we operate, regardless of the asset class that we operate, 3-4 wheels, right? Regardless of the use case, transportation, logistics, last mile logistics, large truck logistics, regardless of those use cases, right? That focus on the ultimately the person that is delivering the service, right, and improving and improving the productivity of that person has massively catalytic effect on the industry as a whole. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You've said quite a lot. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Do you have any questions? Any question? Okay, no question. We've come to the end of this session. I'd like to thank you guys so much, Leonard, everyone. I'd like to thank you guys. Guy, Nakampe, I thank you guys so much. I wish you the best of luck. I hope you become billion-dollar companies. Yeah, have a great day, guys. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.